Hey, how you doing? Straight up. Behaving?
It's time for us to begin. We'll have a word of prayer and then we'll get into our discussion. Our most dear, most wonderful Heavenly Father, we thank you for all that you give us, all that we have, for this time and opportunity to come here together to study your word. Be with us, dear Father, as we look at the life of Job and see the internal struggles that he was faced with and how he contemplated that you were far away from him. We know, Father, that you are not, and that you are always near to us, to those who love you and love your ways. Be with us and help us to always remember that, regardless of the times of difficulty and suffering that we may experience. Be with those who are not able to be with us tonight, recovering from illnesses or surgeries or away working. Help them to return them back safely to us. Be with this church and help us, Father, to be a shining light. Pray all these things in your Son's name. Amen. We are continuing in Job chapter 29. Tonight I'm going to kind of rapid fire through some of these chapters, particularly chapters 29 and 30, because some of the language here sounds redundant to what we've already studied, and it's really kind of hit the high points in this discussion, and not try to belabor the points. Chapter 29 represents, I think, what every person goes through in the midst of their trials and sufferings. They recall the good times before that trial struck them. So Job remembers his prior blessings. I think it's important for us to notice here as we look at Job and the things that he has to say, that Job's greatest pain is his belief that he has lost his relationship with God. Let me make this a little larger here. He says that in the first few verses of Job chapter 29, that he remembers God watching over him when he was in his prime, when the friendship of God was upon his tent, when the Almighty was yet with me, and my children were all around me. So this goes back to the beginning of Job, when Job had his children, he prayed for them. I remember he prayed so fervently to God that even after his children got together and had a party, he prayed for them in case any of them had somehow sinned against God. So he's remembering that. He said, that was great. Those were the days. My steps were washed with butter, and the rock poured out from me streams of oil. This would be like everything he touched turned to gold, it seemed like. And he just had success upon success upon success. So he's remembering that relationship with God and all the things that he had there. I don't think that he is saying these things because he's lamenting having those things. I think he's lamenting the lost relationship with God. And this is what it looked like. In fact, he calls himself, and what an interesting title here in verse 4, that he was friends with God. He identifies that. We had a friendship, a relationship together. And there are a few people in Scripture that could say that about God. They were friends of God. And this is Job saying we had that kind of relationship when God was with him. Job goes on, verse 7, to remember that when he was respected by others and blessed by others, when people would come to him and seek him for advice. Verse 8, the young men saw me, withdrew, and the aged rose and stood, to a sign of reverence and respect to Job because of who he is. He talks about that even the nobility of the day recognized who Job was. And then getting down, let's see. I broke the fangs of the unrighteous and made him drop his prey from his teeth. So Job not only was a righteous man, but he was one that looked out for those that were being oppressed by the wicked doer, the unrighteous, and so that he would, he watched out for them. Watched out for those that could not take care of themselves. Now, having seen those two, and there's more that we're going to see here in just a moment, but just stopping there, remembering that relationship with God, remembering the respect that he had with others, helping the dying, helping the poor, the fatherless, helping the handicapped, helping the victims of oppression. What does all that mean for him now? Well, why is he going back and looking at those things?
Just remembering what it was, from what his life would have at the time.
Yeah, remembering what it was, what his life was. He was at the top. I mean, he was at his prime. In fact, that's what he says in beginning in verse 18. He says, I thought I shall die in my nest. I shall multiply my days as the sand. My roots spread out to the waters with dew all night on my branches. My glory fresh with me, and my bow ever new in my hand. So he had a very bright future ahead. And in fact, not only did people respect him and looked up to him, but they even went to him for godly wisdom. So, verse 21, men listened to me and waited and kept silence for my counsel. After I spoke, they did not speak again, and my word dropped upon them. They waited for me as for the rain, and they opened their mouths as for the spring rain. I smiled on them when they had no confidence, and the light of my face they did not cast down. I chose their way and sat as chief, and I lived like a king among his troops, like the one who comforts mourners. My favorite line from this section here is verse 22. Verse 22, a little bit of irony here. Why is this ironic?
They haven't been able to lost for words the whole time.
That's right. Yeah. His friends have not been at a loss for words. Every time that Job spoke, they had some sort of report to say, Job, you're out of your mind. Job, you're crazy. Job, you've sinned some kind of way. Because he lost everything. He lost that respect. He lost that appearance of godly wisdom. Now they're questioning everything that he says. And he says, there was a time when I spoke, no one spoke again. Right? There was, in essence, it was almost like in a debate. I had the mic drop moment, and and then no one could have a comeback to that. That maybe is the sense of that. All right, that's the long and short of Job 29. Any questions, comments, anything that you saw I didn't point out in Job 29? So that was his past. What do you think chapter 30 is going to be about? So that's his past. His present, right? His present condition. And where is he at right now? Chapter 30, verse 1, he says here, but now they laugh at me. Men who are younger than I, whose fathers I would have disdained to set with the dogs of my flock. What could I gain from the strength of their hands? Men whose vigor is gone. Though through want and hard hunger they gnaw the dry ground by night in waste and desolation. They pick saltworth and the leaves of bushes and the roots of the broom tree for their food. What's he talking about here? He was respected, and nobody debated back with Job. But now, what do they do? Now they laugh at him. And then he talks about this And in fact, not only do some of them laugh at him, the younger than I, right? So not getting any respect from those that are younger than him. He's clearly not being respected as an elder here. But who else is laughing at him and disdaining him? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And look how far this goes down, right? The fathers I disdained. Wrong way. I wouldn't even sat with dogs of my flock, right? They're on the same level as my dog. My dogs are higher than they are. Their vigor is gone. They, basically they eat the dirt and the leaves. They're driven out from human company. They shout after them as a thief. You basically hear these who are the lowest of low in their society. They're also mocking Job. So what does that tell you about how far Job has fallen? He's gone from top all the way to the bottom. There's nobody lower than Job. There's nobody who has nobody that can look at Job and go, wow, at least, or they, verse 10, they abhor me. They don't hesitate to spit at the side of me. They're spitting here at the side of him. It's, they see him go by, they go by him and they spit on the ground, a sign of disrespect. They promote his calamity, so they enjoy it. They're liking the fact that Job has nothing, that he is of nothing. And notice how this chapter ends. Let me skip down verse 24. Yet does not one in a heap of ruin stretch out his hand and in his disaster cry for help? Did I not weep for him whose days was hard? Was not my soul grieved for the needy? But when I hoped for good, evil came. And when I waited for light, darkness came. My inward parts are in turmoil and never still. Days of affliction come to meet him. I go about darkened, but not by the sun. I stand up in the assembly and cry for help. I am a brother of jackals and a company of ostriches. My skin turns black and falls from me, and my bones burn with heat. My lyre is turned to mourning, and my pipe to the voice of those who weep. What does he mean here in these last few verses? He's in misery, yeah. But, it's, he had done all these good things for those around him. The needy he helped. Those that were grieving, he grieved with them. He was a true friend to, it sounds like, to everybody. A true neighbor to those that knew Job. He didn't give them any reason to disdain him when he was on top. He wasn't a snob to anybody. He helped everyone. But now that Job is in need, what's he experiencing? Yeah, nothing. He's getting nothing. Nothing from those that he had helped. He's not, the feelings and the good works aren't being reciprocated back to Job. In fact, his pain, he says it really plainly here in verse 30. Verse 30, my skin turns black and falls from me, and my bones burn with heat. I'm just wasted away. I'm in so much pain. All right, anything from chapter 30? All right, chapter 31 is Job's final appeal regarding his own righteousness. And that's why these chapters almost seem like a summary of all the discussions we've seen so far in this book. Now he's going to make his own final appeal about how he hasn't done anything wrong, that he is righteous. So, verse 1, I have made a covenant with my eyes. How then could I gaze at a virgin? What would be my portion from God above, and my heritage from the Almighty on high? Is not calamity for the unrighteous and disaster for the workers of iniquity? Does not he see my ways and number all my steps? All right, so how does he begin? What's the first claim of righteousness here does he make? Yeah, it's interesting how this comes about because he makes all those points here. But notice the very first thing he does is talk about a covenant, and who's the covenant with?
With his eyes.
With his eyes. To do what? He's saying, I'm maintaining my purity. All right, how can I gaze at a virgin? The idea there is lust, right? Being lustful. So I'm diverting my eyes away from a virgin. So he says throughout this that, hey, I was morally pure. That I didn't. I'm married, but I had my mistresses on the side. He didn't have that. He maintained his purity. And so he said, I made a covenant here. My eyes will not do this. I'm going to look away. It's interesting, that's the very first thing that he starts with in his appeal of righteousness, that I maintained purity with my eyes. Why is that such a big issue that he mentions this first? I mean, why is it important that he mentions this first, I should say? Remember 3 types of sin that the Apostle Paul talks about? Lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life. How many sins start right here with not making cover my eyes? That my eyes have seen. What did Jesus say that if your eye causes you to sin, what should you do?
Look it out.
Pluck it out, right? That's basically what Job has done here. He's made this covenant. Right? I'm not going to violate, my morality with my eyes. I'm not going to do that. All right. So, verse 5. Here's something else. He notes, if I walked with falsehood, and my foot has hastened to deceit, let me be weighed in just balance, and let God know my integrity. If my step has turned aside from the way, and my heart has gone after my eyes, and if any spot has stuck to my hands, then let me sow and another eat, and let what grows for me be rooted up or rooted out. All right, so what's he talking about here in these verses? Yeah, I've been honest. God knows my integrity. I've been a man of integrity. My yes has been yes, my no has been no. I've not turned aside from the way I'm supposed to go. So I've had integrity. I've lived with integrity. So purity and integrity, they go together there, and he puts them together. And I haven't violated that. All right, let's look at the next one. Verse 9. If my heart has been enticed toward a woman, and I have lain in wait at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind for another, and let others bow down on her. For that would be a heinous crime. That would be iniquity to be punished by the judges. For that would be fire that consumed as far as Abaddon. And it would burn to the root all of my increase. So, what's he talking about here? How's his marriage? Yeah, he's faithful to his wife. He didn't go, sneak over to his neighbor's house. He didn't make plans to be unfaithful to his wife. He has been committed to the promise that he made and the vow that he made in marriage. He's been faithful to her. Verse 13, if I have rejected the cause of my manservant or my maidservant when they brought a complaint against me, what then shall I do when God rises up, when he makes inquiry? What shall I answer him? Did not he who made me in the womb make him? And did not one fashion us in the womb? So what's he talking about now? What aspect of his righteousness are we seeing here? He's just. Justice is here, right? I'm going to listen to my maidservant and my manservant if they've got a problem. I'm going to listen to them. I think verse 15 is the key verse here for this section, and I really love this. This right here. What does he mean by this? Yeah. So, exactly right. He's not showing any partiality. You're a servant. You're a lower life form to me, right? So what? You've got problems. You're a servant. You deal with it. I am Job, or I am, who I am. This speaks against the idea of racism, of showing partiality. This is saying, he who made me also made him. We have the same creator, and so we're going to treat each other the same way. I'm going to treat that person the way that I want to be treated. I'm not going to show partiality based on who somebody is or what they are.
They was created equally.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So it goes a long way to speak against the idea that separation of races and racism. It's a powerful verse here. Job is not one like that. And then notice in verse 16. Let me erase this. If I have withheld anything that the poor desire, or have caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or have eaten my morsel alone, and the fatherless has not eaten of it. For from my youth the fatherless grew slowly. For as in my youth the fatherless had grew up with me as with a father, and from my mother's womb I guided the widow. If I have seen anyone perish for lack of clothing, or the needy without covering, if his body has not blessed me, and if he was not warmed with the fleece of my sheep, if I have raised my hand against the fatherless, because I saw my help in the gate, then let my shoulder blade fall from my shoulder, and let my arm be broken from its socket. So now what do we see here in this aspect of his righteousness?
Compassion and love for others.
Yeah, compassion, love, charity. That's what we're seeing here from Job. That hey, I've helped those. If I knew someone was starving, and my belly would be full before I helped them. I was gonna do that. Even from my youth, I learned to be charitable. Now, before anyone thinks that Job is just patting himself on the back about how good of a man he is, notice here verse 24. If I have made gold my trust, or called fine gold my confidence, if I have rejoiced because my wealth was abundant, or because my hand had found much, if I have looked at the sun when it shone, or the moon moving in splendor, and my heart has been secretly enticed, and my mouth has kissed my hand, this also would be iniquity, to be punished by the judges, for I would have been false to God above. What we have here was about this aspect of his righteousness. Yeah. This is the opposite idea from the man with the barns. They need to build bigger barns. Look how much I've got. They need to build bigger barns. That's not Job here. He has not put his trust in gold, and he's put it in trust in God. He's not done that. I love some of the phrases that Job says here. He said, my heart has been secretly enticed, and my mouth has kissed my hand. Aren't I something? Look at me. Yeah, exactly. I pat myself on the back. Look how good I am. Look how great I am. I'm the greatest. Nobody's greater than me. I'm the greatest. He says, no, I've not lived my life like that. All right, we're going to skip over verses 29 to 34. That is dealing with his hospitality. He's been hospitable. We've seen aspects of that as we've gone along. But look at his final cry to God here. Beginning in verse 35. He says, oh, that I had one to hear me. Here is my signature. Let the Almighty answer me. Oh, that I had the indictment written by my adversary. Surely I would carry it on my shoulder. I would bind it on me as a crown. I would give him an account of all my steps. Like a prince, I would approach him. If my land has cried out against me, and its furrows have leapt together, if I have eaten its yield without payment, and made its owner's breath their last, let thorns grow instead of wheat, and foul weeds instead of barley. I like a little thing again. The words of Job are ended. I have spoken. I'm done. What do you think about these final words of Job? What's he saying here? Yeah. It's almost like he lists all the things that he has done in his life. And the way he lived his life and said, here, I've signed it. Right? It's been notarized, it's been signed. In the language of courtroom language, this is his testimony that he has given, and it's been certified. And he even says, oh, that I had the indictment written. What does that mean? What's an indictment? It's the charges, right? The charges, the list of the charges that have been brought forth, right? The district attorney, prosecutor, they're looking to here's the charges that the state is charging you with, and so the indictment is written, and you see, okay, these are the charges that I have. Why does Job say, "Oh, that I had the indictment written by my adversary"?
To me, really see these last 4 chapters. This is kind of where he really tips the edge towards sin. He becomes a lot more prideful. Like here he's saying, if I had this, it would be a book, and I would wear it like a crown, because he believes it to be false. And he would, in verse 37, approach God like a prince. And that is just not who we are.
Yeah.
He wants everyone to know that I'm right, I'm fine, and this is unfair. No one, not even God, can say that I've done anything wrong. I am perfect on this. And he has
Yeah, exactly right. You know, and kind of tipping the scale here. Who is my adversary? Who's Job saying is my adversary?
He's saying God is.
Yeah. He's calling God his adversary. And before he said, I had a friendship with God. Now he's calling him his adversary, his enemy here. That's what happened to the O there. Where's the D? That's harsh language. I mean, calling God your adversary. And you're at the indictment. You know, if I had it, boy, I'd wear it as a badge of honor because I haven't done anything wrong. And so anything that's here it's either error or it's an accusation that doesn't hold water, something. And I would wear it proudly, in fact. I thought about this a little bit, you know, and this is, regardless of where you land on whether or not Donald Trump should be prosecuted for whatever they say he did. But what caught my eye was the campaign selling T-shirts with his mugshot on it for their campaign. They're selling that, right? So it has a badge of honor, the mugshot here. It kind of reminds me, this is what Job is saying. If Job could have that kind of technology, Job would say, I'd wear my mugshot on a T-shirt.
You don't hear adversary in the scriptures a whole lot. The one that we probably hear more than anything is Peter talking about your adversary, the devil.
Yeah.
Going around like a roaring lion. But that's his true adversary. But in Job's mind, well, God authorized it. He did.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So he's spot on.
It's, yes, we see he has accurately defended his position here. And in fact, he's also accurately defended God. In the conversations with Job's friends, Job has stood up for God. And he has on many occasions. And in fact, we've seen Job's theology change throughout the course of those conversations. Because Job was under that same impression, do good, get good, do bad, get bad. But now it's a little different, because he realizes I'm good and I'm getting bad. So something is not right here. But at the same time, it's inappropriate, the words that he's expressed here about God. And we've seen several of these instances, little slivers of inappropriate words towards God throughout this that he has made. He's gone. He's far from me. If he would be here, then he would understand. And if I could stand before him, I'd make my case before God. It's a borderline irreverent.
I think he's being respectful compared to what his wife has to.
True. Right, compared to his wife, yeah. And we're going to see when we get to the conversations that God had with Job, God does set Job straight, and says, let's talk a little bit about this, and sets him straight on some of these things. So maybe the lesson for us in this chapter here is that when we are going through difficulties and trials, is learning to control our tongue through our suffering. Right? Be careful what we say about God, and that's what Job is going to learn here.
It's almost like he's lost his own witness.
Mm-hmm.
But he will find it again.
Yeah.
As bad as it is, it always get worse. God isn't allowing to be killed like that.
That's,
Well, he can't be killed, is what I'm saying. The devil can't actually kill him. But thank God I'm taken out of the death. Especially if I feel like I'm separated from God.
What's he going to put it for?
well, he's going to find out. He's going to find out here with God's conversation with him. But before we get to God's conversation, what do we have in chapter 32? Which of the friends is talking in chapter 32? trick question. What's that?
The other, Elihu.
Yeah. We're introduced to another man here. This is not one of the three friends. This is Elihu. And so it tells us, or it suggests to us maybe, that there are more people around listening to this than just Job and his three friends. I've always had this picture in my mind that it was Job and his three friends, and they're by themselves, and they're having this conversation. But with Elihu here, I'm more inclined to believe that there's a crowd gathered around and listening to these conversations that are taking place. And I think Elihu is in this audience, and he's listening to all this and the back and forth between Job's friends and what Job says. And in fact, he's kept quiet, and we're told why. Notice here, well, I'll come back to the verse 1 here, but I just want to make this point. Verse 4, Elihu had waited to speak to Job because they were older. They were older than he. So what does that tell you about Elihu?
Very young man.
Very young man, very respectful. Right? He's not going to interject and interrupt his elders. Right? He's gonna wait. And so he's been waiting, he's been listening to this, he's been remaining silent, he's listening to these discourses unfold, but he's now had enough. It's too much. And now that they've all quieted down, and maybe there's a lull in the conversation here. Maybe they finished, the three friends have said all they're going to say. Job has had this long discourse, and he's finished, and he's exhausted, and there's a pregnant pause here. And then Elihu says, okay, now it's my opportunity to talk. So notice here, it says, so these three men ceased to answer Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. Then Elihu, the son of Barachel, the Buzite of the family of Ram, burned with anger. He burned with anger at Job because he justified himself rather than God. He burned with anger also at Job's friends, three friends, because they had found no answer, although they had declared Job to be in the wrong. So Elihu's angry. And why is he angry? He's angry at Job. What for? Yeah, blaming God, justifying himself rather than God. Look how great I am versus God, what he's done to me. In essence, maybe this goes more to the point of what Job has done. In Job's mind, if he were God, he wouldn't have done this to Job. He wouldn't have acted this way towards Job. And so Job, in that sense, has said, I am more righteous than God is here. So Elihu is angry with Job for that. He's also angry at the three friends. What they do?
They didn't answer.
Yeah, they have no answer. They say he did wrong, but they can't. Like, where's the evidence? Where's the proof? Show us, what it is. And they have no answer there. So he burns with anger at these four and what they've been saying. Now, the big question everyone has when we come to this part of Job and discussing it is, how should we take Elihu? What should we do with him? Is he going to offer godly counsel, or should he be considered like the other three friends and his words be dismissed? That really is the question for us: is do we trust him as a righteous speaker here, or as just another one of the three friends we discount it? If you look up, if you do some research on Elihu and the things he says here, scholars and commentators are pretty much evenly divided. Some will say, yes, you can trust Elihu what he's saying. Others say, no, you can take him for what he is. He's an angry, brash, young windbag, versus he's has got godly wisdom. So as we go through this we need to think about that on both those aspects and see where we land. Some reject Elihu because he says a lot of things that he says sounds a whole lot like the three friends. But again, that shouldn't sway us in either direction, because we did notice that the three friends, they didn't say anything, they didn't tell any lies. They weren't, false witnesses. They just told what they believed to be the truth. And even though it was wrong and not correct, they were not evil in that necessarily in that way, although they're going to be rebuked for such. The problem with the three friends was how they were applying those principles that they believed to be true. Also, it would not make sense of the text to separate Elihu from those three friends if he was saying the same thing that they were. Because it would then be Job and the four friends instead of Job and the three friends. So the fact that he is separated out in the story does tell us it's a different approach with Elihu that we're going to see here. I think that's important for us to consider and to think about. Some say, well, because Elihu is angry, and angry is sinful. What do you think? Can we just discount Elihu because he's angry?
Righteous anger.
Yeah, righteous anger. Yeah, absolutely. There is such a thing as righteous anger. And we've noted that, throughout the Bible. We see those that have anger, but righteous anger. Be angry, but not yet sin. And we're going to see Elihu say things that also God will say when we get to God's portion here. When God begins to speak, we'll see some similarities between Elihu and what God says. All right. So, we have about 4 minutes. Let's just notice a couple of things that Elihu does here at the beginning of this. Now remember, Elihu is younger, so he has to tread carefully here as he goes about discussing these things, and he's waited for them to finish. Verse 5, and when Elihu saw there was no answer in the mouth of these three men, he burned with anger. Then Elihu answered and said, I am young in years, and you are aged. Therefore I was timid and afraid to declare my opinion to you. I said, let days speak, and many years teach wisdom. But it is the spirit in man, and the breath of the Almighty that makes him understand. It is not the old who are wise, nor the aged who understand what is right. Therefore I say, listen to me, let me also declare my opinion. Behold, I waited for your words, I listened for your wise sayings. When you searched out what to say, I gave you my attention, and behold, there was none among you who refuted Job, or who answered his words. Beware lest you say, we have found wisdom. God may vanquish him, not a man. He has not directed his words against me, and I will not answer him with your speeches. All right, let's stop there for a moment. What's Elihu doing here at the beginning? After he says, hey, I'm angry about all this.
Always saying that because the guys are older don't mean that they're right in everything that they're saying and doing.
Yeah. And just because they're older doesn't mean they're right. Now, he has respected their age, and he has, waited and let them finish. But he thought, I remain quiet. I thought that you were going to declare some godly wisdom here, but you haven't. And then I realized that even if I'm young, I can also declare godly wisdom, because it's not, age alone that makes someone attain godly wisdom. It's, who you are, the work that you do in order to be righteous. A lot of that plays a factor into this. And so he says, hey, let me throw my lot in here. Let me tell you what I believe is going on. And so he starts right away with the three friends. And he basically tells them, and our time's run out, but he basically says, hey, take responsibility for the things you say, right? Your words have power behind them, good or bad, and you bear responsibility for the things that you say. All right, we're going to stop there. Pick up in verse 13 next time. Thank you so much.
Even in our world, we have some young people that's pretty wise and understanding. A lot of wise and a lot wiser than a lot of older men. Not because his age, because he's young, but he understands a lot of things that the older men put aside. They didn't
Oh, yeah.
think it was worthwhile.
Right. Oh, that's exactly right. Yeah. And you know, they even declare themselves that their wisdom came from old. It was passed down to them. Yeah.
Kept going down.
Yeah. 4:14.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, got it.
Glad you covered.
Well, because you put the titles there, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're good.
You'll get them. In the next 30 years, you'll figure it out.
I don't like coffee.
There you go. Next, you'll have her and I'm going to give you some connection.
Yeah, I think, I did tell.
Thank you.
I did tell. Well, I've talked off the fire about it.
I'll make you fire.
I'm just trying to take care of it.
She's a good woman. One time,
Number 414. Oh, how I love Jesus.
It's not, wait just a second.
What did I do?
You have to walk.
No, I just clicked it. It's weird. We'll try again. Weird.
You're trying to get fired, aren't you?
Test it.
Oh, how I love Jesus. I'm gonna have to read up there because I can't see this. I didn't bring my glasses in. There is a name I love to hear, I love to sing its word. It sounds like music in my ear, the sweetest name on earth. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Because he first loved me. It tells me of a Savior's love who died to set me free. It tells me of his precious blood, the sinner's perfect plea. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Because he first loved me. It tells of one whose loving heart can feel my deepest woe, who in each sorrow bears a part that none can bear below. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Because he first loved me. Number 504. I want to be a worker. I want to be a worker for the Lord. I want to love and trust his holy word. I want to sing and pray and be busy every day in the vineyard of the Lord. I will work, I will pray in the vineyard of the Lord. I will work, I will pray, I will labor every day in the vineyard of the Lord. I want to be a worker every day. I want to learn the erring in the way that leads to heaven above, where all is peace and love in the kingdom of the Lord. I will work, I will pray in the vineyard of the Lord. I will work, I will pray, I will labor every day in the vineyard of the Lord. I want to be a worker strong and brave. I want to trust in Jesus' power to save. All who will truly come shall find a happy home in the kingdom of the Lord. I will work, I will pray in the vineyard of the Lord. I will work, I will pray, I will labor every day in the vineyard of the Lord. Song of encouragement will be 293. 293.
In Matthew chapter 23, beginning in verse 11, we read there, Jesus says, Matthew 23, verse 11, "The greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. There's a story of two Civil War generals, George A. Custer and Ulysses S. Grant. Both graduated from West Point. General Grant, being the oldest, graduated in the 1840s, and General Custer in 1861. Grant fought in several wars and was a field general in every sense of the word. In 1865, he was the one who forced Robert E. Lee to surrender to the North. At the surrendering ceremony, Grant wore a mud-splattered uniform of a private with general shoulder pads sewed on. He was the picture of a man who was a worker and had just finished a job. He said he took no glory in the surrender of a fellow general. General Grant was a humble man and an excellent leader. When General Custer graduated West Point, he went from second lieutenant to brigadier general in less than 2 years. When he assumed command of his brigade in 1863, he wore a black velveteen uniform with gold braids from the elbows to the cuffs of his sleeves and a golden feather in the hat band of his dress hat. He was known to have the brashest of attitudes and a personality that one newspaper columnist at the time described the personality of a childish upstart. General Grant listened to his advisors and led his troops into victory, winning nearly every battle he fought. General Custer led his troops into a deathly defeat at the Battle of Little Bighorn. He had been given advice to detour and go to another front, but the general thought he knew best and rejected the advice of his second in command and ordered a full attack. The only living survivor of that brigade was one horse. Custer dressed to impress. Grant dressed for work. Custer wanted to be noticed. Grant wanted to win. General Custer reminds us of the Pharisees in Jesus' day, who wore clothes to impress others. They sat in seats of honor and loved to be addressed by titles. They exhibited a fake exterior of righteousness. They possessed a false idea of ministry and demonstrated a faulty concept of greatness. In the midst of a scathing rebuke of their self-righteous hypocrisy, Jesus said these words that we just read. He who is greatest among you shall be your servant. And whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. 101 times the New Testament uses the word servant, serve, and minister. Jesus is called a holy servant. In the Old Testament, the Messiah is pictured as a suffering servant. Jesus' attitude in life was servant-minded. He went about doing good. He humbled himself. He washed feet. He served the disciples. Jesus is our greatest example of servanthood. And one of the things that we see throughout the New Testament is we are then called to serve. No matter what we are in our lives, no matter what position that we may hold, we are called to be servants. We want to desire to make a difference. We desire to humble our hearts, dirty our hands, serve others, and hope to help each other go to heaven one day. That's what we've been called to do, to work. We want to help you to fulfill that mission to work this evening. And I'm obeying the gospel to do so. If you are a child of God, not living faithfully, can we help you get back to the work? In the way possible, won't you come? Let's go to the stand as we sing.
Come to Jesus, He will save you, though your sins as crimson glow. If you give your heart to Jesus, He will make them white as snow. Come to Jesus, come to Jesus, come to Jesus, come today. Come to Jesus, come to Jesus, come to Jesus, come today. Come to Jesus, do not tarry. Enter in at mercy's gate. Oh, delay not till the morrow, lest thy coming be too late. Come to Jesus, come today. Come to Jesus. Come to Jesus. Come to Jesus. Come today. Come to Jesus, dying sinner. Other Savior there is none. He will share with you His glory when your pilgrimage is done. Come to Jesus, come to Jesus, come to Jesus, come today. Come to Jesus, come to Jesus, come to Jesus, come today.
Please be seated. In a few moments, we'll have our closing prayer, and we'll have some announcements as well. There is an announcement I do want to make to begin with. We have counted the papers that were in the box, asking you to put forth men to be considered for the work of eldership here at Eastside. And having looked it over, there was 3 men that names appeared significantly in that who I have contacted and who are all willing to serve, and that is Jay Vance and Rick Pender and Gary Acker. They are willing to work and to serve. But so at this point, what we're going to do is we have a 2-week time period that if anyone has any objections or any cause to scriptural cause to say no, they shouldn't serve, then please talk with the one individually and discuss that together. During that 2 weeks, I will talk to them again to see if there is still a desire to serve. And if there is, then on Lord willing, on September 24th, we will appoint these 3 good men as elders here at Eastside. And this is a wonderful thing to see us to be organized the way that the Lord would want us to be organized. And so I'm delighted to announce that. And if you have any questions about the process or anything about what we're doing, please feel free to let me know, or to even to talk to one of those 3 men, Jay, Gary, and Rick. So that's exciting news. So Lord willing, the 24th will be after our gospel meeting and after I'm recovered enough to be back here to do that. I am going Friday to have surgery. They're going to call me tomorrow sometime to let me know what time to arrive. And I always do not like that part. When I get nervous, I'm going to miss the phone call. So sometime they're going to call me and tell me when to arrive. And I've already started this week weaning myself off of coffee, so hopefully Friday won't be so bad when I can't have my coffee. He said recovery would be 6 to 8 weeks, but for the first 2 weeks, he doesn't want me sitting at a desk. So I ordered on Amazon one of those hospital tray things for the bed. So we'll see if my wife lets me use that. If I'm sitting in the bed with it, I'm not at a desk. So I'm following the rules. So we'll see. But I'm supposed to go home the same day, so I expect everything to be fine with that. Don't forget, Karen is still recovering from her surgery. And then Ashley's still recovering from her. She's doing good? Good. Glad to see Jeffrey with us. He's still recovering with his shoulder surgery. Others, I mention of? Oh, Lisa's not feeling well?
Lisa's got an infection in her eye that they're dealing with, so.
We'll remember her. That's awful.
Karen, too.
Karen, too?
Karen.
Oh, yeah. I think I mentioned Karen, yeah. Karen with her surgery. Can't remember. Yeah, I did. Did I? I don't know.
My wife told me.
Well, you know, she's so important. You should mention her more than once.
Just make sure we got it.
Just make sure we got that covered. Hope you're listening, Karen. Others mention of.
I meant to bring a card for my friend today, Hannah, that was sent to rehab. But I got a piece of paper back here that I would like for y'all to sign, please, to get to it, because that would mean a lot to
All
us.
right. Thank you so much, and let's go ahead and have our
One more note, we have the meal list for the preacher.
Oh, yeah.
Josh, back there, you hadn't had an opportunity to look, I think there was one date remaining. I did not in. I think y'all had mentioned Wednesday night, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's Tuesday night.
Tuesday night.
I think, I will look it back there.
It's Tuesday.
Tuesday night.
Okay.
Back there. I almost forgot. Gospel meeting is this Sunday.
Sunday, yeah.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully I'll be here for some of that meeting. I'm hoping to be. Thank you for reminding me of that. Let's go ahead and go to our God in prayer. Our most dear, most wonderful Heavenly Father, thank you that we have been able to come here tonight to study your word together. Be with those that are recovering. Help them, Father, to return back here safely with us. We thank you, Father, that we have come to this point in our process of appointing elders, that we have 3 men that have been, names have been brought forth. Help us, dear Father. Help them as they consider and think and contemplate this great work that we have here at Eastside. Be with them, dear Father. Be with all of us as we consider and think and reason with your word these things. Help us, dear Father, as we go back out into the world. Remember who we are and whom we serve. And help us to one day hear those words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Pray all these things in your Son's name. Amen.